very brief messages. There was a note from the podium on imprisonment. Yes, it's there in the law, but we don't refer to imprisonment of bodies. We are referring here to seizing of strategic goods as a punitive policy. But otherwise, the 50 or 60 articles for the protection of consumers are all about having deterring fines. Also, another new thing is getting a refund for the consumer. More often than not, we find consumers going to courts and the manufacturer has to pay 100 Egyptian pounds. What do they do? Do they have to start a new legal action to get the damage? No. In this law, besides the fine that might be up to 2 Egyptian million, you need to give a refund for the customer equivalent to the value of the good. So consumer protection agency had nothing to do with the manpower of the CPA. If we have 10 strong educations, all the companies will be committed. So we need to move swiftly. This might turn into a public opinion law. We need to focus or shed the light on the violators to deter the others. The informal sector, of course, should be handled, and we will tackle that in the new SME law. So this is a bit off topic. Also, the, someone said that the law does not differentiate between a pair of socks and automotive products. I like the way he phrased, but I want to tell him I was part of the drafting this law. Article 17 says that consumers shall have the right. Of course, we need to differentiate between socks and cars, but socks are no less important. All the consumers shall have the right to return, replace, or exchange the good without any reasons or without additional cost during the first 14 days. And with some exceptions, consumers shall not replace the products in these five cases. First, if the nature of the product or the nature of packaging does not allow so or will change the nature of the product, especially for perishable goods, or if the product is not the same as its original state when it gets bought. So here we are talking about free replacement. Those who want to play some games with the shops. If this product is designed or is customized as per the customer desires, also all the newspaper and the printed materials. So of course, we are telling the consumers if you don't like your product, you can return or replace. But sometimes abroad they ask you, what's wrong? What's wrong with the product? Why don't you like it? But now it's free. So of course there is some kind of distinction between Mercedes and a pair of socks. I take all the comments openly, but I wanted to clarify that. Other points that were raised by the podium or the audience include, of course, the competition is covered in this law. The law regulates competition because many people participate in the competition and they are very attractive to the way the competition is promoted, and the law regulates that. Also, Mr. Hamdi Abdelaziz discussed something that is the protection by this law of uh, consumers. When it comes to developers, they sell the units while they are not finalized. So people get some technicians to finalize the painting, the sewage, and maybe after 6 months everything will be broken. So this sector is not regulated, and we need to do so. So this legislation sends a message to this sector. So I think this is a phenomena in our society. Yes, I dare to say a phenomena. Many of the households installed an intercom or a satellite dish or any of the basic installments, and then these customers suffered a lot due to the poor quality. So I'm not sure if the same person who raised the same question about the socks and Mercedes raised this very question. I'm sorry, the speaker is not using the mic. No, but my problem is not having a technical reference for the qualities or the standards. There is no body offering this technical reference. Yes, there is a lot of controversy on that. So, I'm sorry, the speaker is not using the mic. A very important question that has to do with the professionals. Suppliers in the previous law meant manufacturer or merchants, but here anyone who practices a commercial or a professional activity providing a service for consumers, so they are covered by this law. Mr. Tawfiq said about the public or private law persons. Are they included? And I think yes, it's covered. And we have a clear definition for products. We do not differentiate. We protect consumers against any violations by private sector, by public sector, by natural persons, by legal persons, and the text is very clear. When it comes to the minister starting the legal action, this is limited to one crime, which is any crime inconsistent with the public order or the public moral. So this should be up to the competent ministers. But other than this, all the crimes shall be dealt with through the CPA. Also, we don't have someone from the Ministry of Supply here. But here the law stipulates that the competent minister is the prime minister. And of course, the Minister of Supply is part of the committee. And I cannot say that the Ministry of Supply is not relevant. This is the Ministry of Supply and Internal Trade. Internal Trade means market. So this is very linked. Maybe we have other alternatives, but I cannot speak in the absence of the Minister of Supply and Internal Trade. Maybe we need to ask the question, uh, do we have to have one minister for supply and the internal trade? But of course they are relevant when it comes to consumer protection. And here, what about representing the Ministry of Industry and private sector? Article 46 on the formation of the board of directors stipulates that there is a board chairperson, there is a vice president, there is someone representing the state council, someone representing the foreign trade selected by the Minister of trade, there is a representative of the Ministry of Industry, there is a representative of the Food Safety Authority, there is a representative of the Federation of Egyptian Industries, a representative of a Chamber of Commerce. So this is not the CPA is not kidnapped by a certain ministry. What we should focus more on is enforcement and implementation of this law. The question posed by the member of the parliament on the enforcement mechanism is very important and very practical. Enforcement is not the most important thing. Without having a law, you cannot enforce. So both are equally important. You need a law and you need to be able to enforce the law. Then we should have a government supervising the laws, and of course the parliament should also supervise, and you are part of the parliament and you do lots of things on that. So this is a joint role. Of course, the government should evaluate, re-evaluate, reconsider things, and if the situation in Egypt is the best, then of course we wouldn't have these legislation made of 95 articles, and they are not mere words. Each article has its own meaning, and then the law was amended, well, like slightly amended, and then it was ratified. When it comes to media or mass media, of course, the misleading media in the previous law had to pay a fine up to 200 Egyptian pounds. Who will be punished? The people airing or funding this ad. But now, in the new piece of legislation, the CPA should contact the channel to stop airing this ad. And if the channel does not stop this ad, they might be punishable by 2 million Egyptian pounds or equivalent of the value of the ad. And let me find the legal text to read it. So Article 68 stipulates that anyone will be punishable by 50,000 and up to a million and a half anyone who does not commit to stopping airing misleading ads. And civil judges is something, and criminal judges are a different story, and you know that better than me. I'm sorry, the speaker is not using the mic. You said that the value of producing these misleading ad was 46 millions. Now you have civil adjudications, right? You will not take the fine. The state will get the money, so they will enforce it really fast because they want to get the money. But here I am speaking about the criminal aspect. So if you get a damage of 50 million Egyptian pounds, all the bodies will be represented and they can get this amount of money. It's not that simple. It's more complicated. If the manufacturer might be faced with a criminal offense and he has to pay such amount of money, of course they will be deterred. And if the text is not strong enough, we can reconsider that. But it's really different when it comes to dealing with satellite channels or mass media means. Again, the communication sector is not excluded. Of course, the CPA used to coordinate things with the body regulating communication. Maybe it's a problem of application or enforcement, but we know that we have a lot of problems in this ICT sector when it comes to the services offered to the consumers. So what we need is enforcement of the laws available, and I want to stop here. I want to wrap up. The question was about having a down to earth approach. It's not about the letter of the law, it's about the enforcement. And the circles are not connected. So let me start with the supervisory mechanism. That's part of the member of the parliament, but the biggest share should go to the civil society. The civil society can warn the member of the parliament of many things, and the government should do cost benefit analysis before anything is referred to the member of the parliament. We should have a set of questions addressed to the parliament in the first place. Also, the board of directors of the CPA, you said it's weak, and then Mr. Hisham answered and told you that there are three representatives of the technical bodies. The new piece of legislation is stronger. But when you say representation of the ministry, what about this level of the presentation? Maybe the ministry sent you the youngest member of the junior entry level. And in all the countries all over the world, there should be a representation of the civil society, because with due respect to the Federation of Egyptian Industry, they are affiliated to the minister. Then we should have a representative of the civil society. You answered the question of having punishment as imprisonment. If we have EOS, then you could have all the technical standards. You need to build the technical capacities of all the state bodies, and this law should be part of the institutional reform and not the other way around. I shouldn't wait for these institutions to be reformed, then start enforcing the law. This is my own personal opinion. We shall not have this CPA under the Minister of Supplies. He will be the chairperson of the this CPA. Who will choose the CPA chairperson? The minister. Then okay. Then you know what I'm referring to. Awareness, referring to what Mr. Hamdi said about the marriages that were broken because they couldn't return or get a refund after breaking the marriage. Then this CPA should have a connection to the National Council of Women, to other societies and associations in order to discuss problems first. What about painters, people who paint the flats, or who are responsible for the flooring? The flats are covered is very good news. But what about licensing these kind of jobs? Also, the executive regulation should be reviewed by the member of the parliament or the civil society, and also we should issue a decree by the minister of industry for any importer to have an accredited service center. The ICT sector is covered. The fact that one of the resources is the fines will lead us to a conflict of contracts. We do not want to fall in the same problem as industrial development unit. Whenever someone wants to issue a paper, they have to pay lots of money. Why? Because this is part of their resources. So please, we don't want to fall in this trap. Also, we need to get a final decision during a certain amount of time. But what if this is not done? Who will hold people responsible account? The cabinet? There is much debate on this 25% getting from the dispute resolution revenues as part of the resources. But we addressed this issue. The text reads as follow: the staff working in the CPA cannot get any rewards from these complaints or dispute resolution fees. So of course they will not be given to the individual staff. Okay, then I respect that. Mr. Ahmed had many good suggestions. We should get a paper to license the products to be able to have advertisements. Also, there is a criminal punishment for advertisers, and here you will have a conflict with the Supreme Council of the media, because we do not have clear-cut responsibilities, because the Supreme Council of Media might tell you that I have an issue with that. Maybe we have something like hot lines, but I think the civil society organization should help in order for you to be able to do anything. What about the ministry offering services? Of course, the relation among the regulatory bodies should be considered. The professionals' fees question. There is no control over the money they get, but you can report malpractices. If a doctor having a surgery to remove appendix, but they remove the kidney or a liver, they should be held accountable. Abroad, if the doctor does not smile to the patient before the surgery, they can start a legal action. So I think that should be part of the consumer protection. And we want to have a piece of legislation on informal economy, and parts of this piece might exert a pressure on the informal sector of the economy. E-commerce is very, very, very critical, and we will shed the light on that later, because we talk a lot but we do not do much, and we will organize a series on local products, on IP law, and I will conclude with what Mr. Tariq said. This agency should be autonomous and independent. The speaker is not using a mic. What if this CPA tasks overlaps with the limitations set by the Supreme Council of Media? They should coordinate really well, otherwise we will have a catastrophe. And thank you so much for being here with us, and sorry for keeping you that late.